What would you do if your own family tried to take your home from you, but you had a secret that would turn everything upside down? Emily Mitchell never expected to be evicted from the apartment that had been in her family for generations, especially not by her own family. But when her mother and brother sold her home without her knowledge, Emily had a surprise waiting for them. Armed with the real deed and proof of ownership, she set out to show them that family isn't about control, it's about trust. Stay tuned to see how Emily takes back her life. My channel's struggling, so if you're intrigued, please comment 1 to help me out. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Subscribe to see how it ends, and I wish you all good health. You have 30 days to move out. My mother's voice was laced with satisfaction, her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically on my kitchen counter. We sold your apartment to Jessica. I stood in my sun-drenched kitchen, the very same place where I'd hosted countless family dinners, built my catering business from the ground up, and cared for my grandmother in her final days. The morning light stretched long shadows over the hardwood floors she'd helped me restore, casting an almost dreamlike quality over the space. My name is Emily Mitchell, and at 35, I never imagined I'd be facing eviction from my own home, at the hands of my own family. Don't look so surprised, my brother Michael added, his arm protectively draped around his wife Jessica's shoulders. You barely even use this place, always off traveling for your catering gigs. Jessica needs a proper home now that the baby's on the way. The baby, of course. Jessica's pregnancy had become the family's latest excuse to give my brother everything he wanted, just as they had done throughout our childhood. I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the momentary flash of uncertainty that flickered across my mother's face at my unshaken calm. And you thought selling my apartment was the answer? I asked, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil I felt inside. Well, it's not technically yours anymore, my mother replied, her smile turning cold as she pulled out a folder from her purse. Your father and I kept our names on the deed when you moved in, remember? For tax purposes. Her grin widened with a touch of triumph. We signed the papers yesterday. Jessica and Michael take possession in 30 days. The memory of my grandmother's last conversation came rushing back, as if she were sitting across from me now. Just weeks before she passed, she had looked at me, sharp-eyed despite her weakening body. They'll try to take it from you, she had warned in this very kitchen as I prepared her favorite rolls. Your mother never forgave me for not giving her this building when she married your father. The apartment had been in my grandmother's family for generations, an elegant pre-war building in one of the city's most coveted neighborhoods. My mother had grown up here, always assuming she would inherit it all, but my grandmother had different plans. I know what you did with the money I gave you, my grandmother had told me that day. You invested it in your business, built something real. Not like Michael with his failed startups or Jessica with her fake Instagram brand. She'd reached into her bag, pulling out an envelope. Keep this safe. Don't tell them until you have to. Now, standing in my kitchen, facing the betrayal of my own family, I felt the weight of that envelope, tucked securely in my desk drawer upstairs. Actually, I said, keeping my voice even, we should probably discuss something. I turned, walking toward my office, aware of their impatient stares following me. My mother had never approved of me turning the second bedroom into an office. A proper lady needs a proper guest room, she'd often sniffed. I returned with my own folder, worn at the edges but carefully preserved. Before we talk about me moving out, you might want to take a look at this. What's that? Jessica asked, her voice hesitant as she rested one hand on her barely noticeable bump. The real deed, I said, setting it down on the counter with a quiet certainty. And the proof of ownership for the building next door. My mother's face drained of color as she flipped through the papers, her hands trembling slightly. The deed to both properties signed and notarized with my grandmother's unmistakable signature was now in my name. The apartment had never belonged to my parents. My grandmother had kept their names on the rental agreement only to maintain peace. But in the end, the property had passed directly to me. This can't be legal, my mother sputtered, her composed facade cracking. Oh, it's legal, I assured her. Mr. Patterson handled everything himself. The mention of my grandmother's longtime lawyer made her flinch. You might want to check the validity of your sale to Jessica and Michael. It's hard to sell something you don't own. Michael grabbed the papers, his face turning an interesting shade of red. You knew about this the whole time? You let us go through with the sale? I found out about your plans weeks ago, I admitted. Grandmother always said it's better to let people show their true colors. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. Jessica had sunk into one of my bar stools, looking lost. My mother was still staring at the deed like she could change it through sheer force of will. You should have told us, she finally said, her voice tight with anger. Like you should have told me you were selling my home, I countered. The home I've lived in for 10 years? The home where I took care of grandmother when none of you would? The memories came flooding back. The late nights balancing my fledgling catering business with grandmother's care, Michael too busy with his latest venture to help, my parents conveniently traveling during the hardest months. I put my life on hold while they carried on as usual, secure in their assumption that the building would eventually be theirs to control. What are we supposed to do now? Jessica asked quietly. We already sold our apartment. I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Jessica had always seemed swept along by my family's dynamics, trying to please everyone. I'm not heartless, I said. The building next door has a vacant unit on the 3rd floor. It's similar to this one, actually. You can rent it at market rate. Rent? Michael exploded. From your own sister? Would you prefer to find something else in the neighborhood? I asked mildly. I hear the new luxury building down the street has openings. Of course, their 2 bedrooms start at twice what I'm offering. My mother stood up suddenly, gathering her papers with shaking hands. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Your grandmother had no right. She had every right, I cut in. This building was her legacy, and she chose how to pass it on. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my property manager to discuss some updates to the security system. I watched them file out, noting how Michael wouldn't meet my eyes, how Jessica lingered for a moment, like she wanted to say something, before following them. My mother was last, pausing in the doorway. You've changed, she said, and I couldn't tell if it was an accusation or a realization. No, I replied. I just stopped pretending to be who you wanted me to be. After they left, I walked through my apartment, touching the walls my grandmother and I had painted together, looking out the windows where we'd watched countless sunsets. In my office, I opened the drawer and pulled out her envelope, now empty of its crucial documents, but still containing her last letter to me. Remember, she'd written, sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give is letting people face the consequences of their own actions. I smiled, thinking of how she'd seen this coming years ago. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. Can we talk about the apartment next door? Just us? Maybe, I thought. Some good could come from all this after all. But first, I had a security system to upgrade. After all, as grandmother always said, being prepared meant staying prepared. Outside, the city bustled on, unaware of the drama that had just unfolded in my kitchen. I had work to do, a catering business to run, properties to manage, and a family to keep at arm's length. But for now, I just stood in my kitchen, in my home, and let myself feel the quiet satisfaction of standing my ground. The next few days brought a flurry of activity I hadn't anticipated. First came the angry calls from my father, who had been conveniently absent during the initial confrontation. Your mother is beside herself, he said, his voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. How could you embarrass the family like this? I was in my catering kitchen prepping for a weekend wedding when he called. Embarrass the family? I repeated, carefully piping rosettes onto a 3-tier cake. By owning property or by stopping you from illegally selling my home? Don't be difficult, Emily. We were trying to help your brother. Family helps family. Funny, I said, stepping back to examine my work. I don't remember any of you helping me when I was sleeping on a cot in grandmother's room during her last months, or when I was building my business from scratch. The silence on his end spoke volumes. Finally, he sighed. Your mother wants to speak with our lawyer about challenging the deed. She can try, I replied calmly. Mr. Patterson has all the documentation, including videos of grandmother signing the papers and explaining her decisions. But hey, if you want to waste money on legal fees instead of just accepting reality, that's your choice. Hours after the call ended, I was surprised by an unexpected visitor. Jessica stood in the doorway of my kitchen, looking smaller somehow without Michael or my mother by her side. "Can we talk?" she asked, one hand resting on her small baby bump. "I brought peace offerings." She held up a bag from my favorite bakery. I nodded toward a stool by the prep counter. "Those better be their lemon tarts." She gave a small, uncertain smile and pulled out a white box and a few chocolate croissants. "I remember you stress-eating these during wedding season last year." We sat in silence for a moment, the rich scent of butter and sugar mingling with the vanilla cake I had been working on. Finally, Jessica spoke, her voice soft. "I didn't know," she murmured, "about any of it. Michael told me your parents were giving us the apartment as a baby gift. I never thought—" She trailed off, her voice faltering. "You never thought they were trying to steal it from me?" I finished for her. She flinched, nodding slowly. "Michael said they discussed it with you, that you were okay with moving to a smaller place since your business takes up so much of your time anyway." She picked at a croissant, avoiding my gaze. "I should have asked you directly." I thought about Jessica, who had entered our family 4 years ago with wide-eyed optimism, eager to win everyone's approval. I'd watched as my mother and Michael shaped her into their ideal, pushing her to quit her teaching job. A proper wife doesn't need to work. Encouraging her expensive tastes. Appearances matter in this family. "The apartment next door," I said, surprising myself. "The offer still stands. 3rd floor, same layout. The previous tenants just moved out, and I was planning to renovate it before listing it." Jessica's eyes lit up, hope flashing across her face. "Really? Even after everything?" "On one condition," I said, my tone firm. "This stays between us. No family manipulation, no running to my mother with every little detail. If you and Michael want to rent it, it's a business arrangement. I'll give you a fair price, but I expect everything to be professional." "Michael won't like that," she admitted, the words coming reluctantly. "He thinks family shouldn't have to pay family." "And how's that working out for him?" I asked, thinking of his string of failed businesses, each one funded by my parents' seemingly endless patience. Maybe it's time for a change. Jessica was silent for a long moment, absent-mindedly rubbing her belly. "Can I see it?" she asked finally. "The apartment?" I grabbed my keys. No time like the present. The building next door was identical to mine, both designed by the same architect in the 1920s. The 3rd-floor apartment needed work-scuffed hardwood floors, an outdated kitchen, but the structure was solid. Large windows flooded the space with natural light, and the layout was perfect for a growing family. "It's beautiful," Jessica whispered, running her hand along the original crown molding. "Even like this, it's beautiful." "It needs updating," I said, "but I was planning a full renovation anyway. If you're interested, you could help choose the finishes, make it your own." She turned to me, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Why are you being so nice to me, after everything we tried to do?" "Because you're the only one who's apologized," I said simply. "And because I think you might be ready to stop letting them make your decisions for you." Just then, both our phones buzzed. The family group chat I had muted days ago sprang to life. My mother had sent a long message about an emergency family meeting this weekend. "Your father and I have made some decisions about the future of both properties," she wrote. "Attendance is mandatory." Jessica looked at me, panic flashing across her face. "What are they planning?" I deleted the message without reading further. "Nothing that matters. They don't own these buildings, remember? They can plan all they want." "Michael will expect me to go," she said quietly. "They'll all expect us to present a united front against you." "And what do you want?" She looked around the apartment again, taking in the potential of the space. "I want to make my own decisions," she said finally. "I want my baby to grow up in a home that's ours, really ours, even if we're renting it, not something taken from someone else." I pulled out my phone and drafted a quick email to my contractor. "I can have renovation plans drawn up by next week. Standard lease, fair market rent, 1st month free while the work is being done. But Jessica..." I waited until she met my eyes. This has to be your decision, not Michael's, not my mother's, yours. She squared her shoulders, looking more confident than I had seen her in years. I'd like to see those plans when they're ready. As we walked back downstairs, I received another text, this one from my father. Your mother is looking into legal options. Don't force us to take this further. I showed it to Jessica, who shook her head. They really don't know when to stop, do they? No, I agreed, but they're about to learn. Looking at Jessica's determined expression, I realized something was shifting. The family dynamics that had once seemed set in stone were beginning to crack, revealing new possibilities underneath. Maybe this wasn't just about protecting my property anymore. Maybe it was about breaking patterns that should have been broken long ago. Want to help me finish decorating that wedding cake? I asked. I seem to remember you being pretty good at flower arranging before my mother decided it wasn't sophisticated enough for you. Her smile was genuine this time. I'd like that. And Emily, thank you. Not just for the apartment, but for showing me there's another way to handle things. As we walked back to my kitchen, I thought about my grandmother's words again. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about showing others how to break free, too. The family meeting was set for Sunday afternoon at my parents' sprawling suburban home. I hadn't planned to attend until Jessica called me in tears the night before. They're planning something, she whispered. Michael keeps having private calls with your father's lawyer. They're talking about challenging the inheritance, claiming grandmother wasn't competent when she signed everything over to you. I sat in my office looking at the framed photo of grandmother and me at my catering company's opening. Let them try, I said calmly. Mr. Patterson has video recordings of every meeting, every signature. Grandmother knew exactly what she was doing. There's more, Jessica continued. They want to use my pregnancy, playing we have more right to the properties because we're starting a family. Michael doesn't know I'm telling you this. I thought about Jessica standing up to my family for the first time, choosing truth over loyalty. Thank you for warning me. Will you be there tomorrow? Yes, she said firmly, and I'm done playing their games. Sunday arrived with perfect autumn weather, the kind of day grandmother would have loved. I pulled up to my parents' house exactly on time, noting the collection of cars already there. The whole family had gathered for the show. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut. My mother sat in her favorite armchair like a queen holding court, my father standing behind her, Michael paced by the window, while various aunts and uncles filled the remaining seats. Jessica sat slightly apart, meeting my eyes as I entered. Emily, my mother said coldly, so glad you decided to join us. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, remaining standing, though I'm curious why we're here since the property situation is already settled. My father stepped forward, holding a familiar-looking folder. We've been reviewing the circumstances of your grandmother's decisions. Our lawyer has concerns about her state of mind in those final months. Really? I kept my voice level. The months when I was caring for her while all of you were too busy. You manipulated her, Michael snapped. Turned her against us while she was vulnerable. Before I could respond, Jessica stood up. No, she didn't. I was there sometimes. Remember when none of you visited? Grandmother was sharp as ever. She knew exactly what she was doing. The room went silent. Michael stared at his wife in shock. Jessica, sit down. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? She moved to stand beside me. You're trying to steal a home using our baby as an excuse. I won't be part of it. My mother's face darkened. Jessica, dear, you're upset. Pregnancy hormones? Don't, Jessica cut her off. Don't try to dismiss me. Emily offered us a beautiful apartment, a fair rent, a chance to make our own home, but that's not enough for you, is it? You have to have everything, control everything. I pulled out my phone, queuing up a video. Before this goes any further, you should watch something. I connected to the TV, and suddenly grandmother's face filled the screen. I'm recording this, she said in the video, because I know my daughter. She never forgave me for not giving her control of the buildings when she married. But property isn't just about ownership, it's about stewardship. Emily understands that. She's built something real, helped others build their dreams too. The properties are hers fully and legally. Any attempt to challenge this will only reveal your own greed. The video continued, showing grandmother clearly stating her wishes, signing documents, Mr. Patterson verifying everything. When it ended, the silence was deafening. "There's more," I said quietly. "Years of documentation. Would you like to see the medical evaluations confirming her competency, the witness statements? How far do you want to take this?" My father dropped his folder. My mother's face had gone pale, but it was Michael who surprised me. "You knew," he said to Jessica. "You knew about the apartment next door? You've been talking to her?" Jessica straightened her spine. "Yes, because she's the only one who's been honest, the only one who offered us a real chance, not schemes and manipulation." "The renovation plans are drawn up," I added, "if you're still interested. But this ends now. No more challenges, no more threats. The buildings are mine, and that's final." My mother stood abruptly. "I think you should all leave. We need time to process this." As we walked out, Jessica caught my arm. "I'd like to see those renovation plans," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "For our new home." Outside, the autumn sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. Jessica and I walked to our cars together, leaving behind the sounds of argument from the house. "You know they'll never forgive us," she said. I thought about grandmother's words about stewardship, about building something real. "Maybe, but we'll build something better instead." 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated apartment next door, watching Jessica arrange fresh flowers in the sunlit kitchen. Her baby bump was much more prominent now, and the nursery down the hall was ready and waiting. The renovation had transformed the space into something beautiful: warm wooden floors, bright open spaces, and a kitchen that rivaled mine. "The marble countertops were worth every penny," Jessica said, adjusting a stem in her arrangement. She had rediscovered her love of flower arranging, even starting a small side business designing centerpieces for my catering events. Though Michael is still adjusting to the rent payments. The months following the family confrontation had brought significant changes. Michael, faced with losing both his wife's support and his parents' financial safety net, had finally taken a real job at a consulting firm. He wasn't speaking to me yet, but Jessica said he was different at home, more focused, less entitled. My parents had tried the silent treatment first, then tearful guilt trips, and finally reluctant acceptance. The turning point came during the holidays when my mother showed up at my door looking older and unusually uncertain. "I've been thinking about what your grandmother said," she admitted, not quite meeting my eyes, "about stewardship, about building something real." She had taken a deep breath. "I didn't build anything. I just expected things to be given to me." Now, watching Jessica prepare for her upcoming baby shower, the first family event since the confrontation, I thought about how much had changed. "Your mother RSVP'd," Jessica said, reading my mind. "She asked if she could bring her lemon squares." I raised an eyebrow. "The famous lemon squares she never shared the recipe for." "She offered to teach me how to make them," Jessica smiled. "Baby steps, right?" My phone buzzed, a message from my property manager about a long-time tenant who needed some maintenance work. Under my management, both buildings had flourished. I had started a program helping small business owners rent commercial spaces at reasonable rates, watching new dreams take root and grow. "Miss Mitchell?" a voice called from the hallway. It was Isabella, one of my commercial tenants who ran a successful alterations business in the building. "I brought the curtains for the nursery and some empanadas, too. My grandmother's recipe." This was the community grandmother had envisioned, people supporting each other, building something together. As Jessica and Isabella discussed the curtains, sharing food and stories, I slipped away to my own apartment. In my office, I opened the bottom drawer where I kept grandmother's last letter. The paper was worn now, but her words remained clear. "Property is more than bricks and mortar, Emily. It's about creating spaces where people can grow, where communities can thrive. You understand that in a way your mother never did." A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. To my surprise, it was Michael. "Can we talk?" he asked, shifting uncomfortably yet determined. "About everything?" We sat in my kitchen, the same space where everything had started months ago. Michael stared into his coffee, taking his time to collect his thoughts. "Jessica's happier than I've ever seen her," he finally said. "The apartment, her flower business, Even the way she stands up to Mom now. I didn't realize how much we were all choking under their expectations. And you? I asked carefully, wanting to know how he'd truly changed. I'm learning, he admitted. Real work, real responsibility, it's tough at times, but it's better. I'm sorry, Emily. I'm sorry for trying to take your home, for not standing up to them sooner. Nah, before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, a message from the property manager. It was about a potential commercial tenant, a small bakery looking to expand. Want to see something? I asked, a hint of excitement in my voice. Something my grandmother understood that took me a while to figure out. I led him down to the commercial spaces, introducing him to Isabella at her alteration shop, Mr. Chin at his bookstore, and the new art gallery that showcased local artists. Each space was a dream in progress. This is what it's really about, I explained. Not just owning property, but creating spaces where people can thrive, where they can be independent. Michael was quiet for a moment. Like Jessica with her flowers. Like you with your catering. Exactly. I turned to him, the weight of my words hanging between us. The apartment was never just about having a place to live, it was about having the freedom to build something of my own. Later that evening, as I helped Jessica finish setting up for the baby shower, I reflected on family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we create around us. Isabella had brought more empanadas, Mr. Chin contributed special teas for the party, and even my mother had called to ask if she could come early to help. I'd invited grandmother's old friends. They keep asking about you, Jessica said, arranging name cards on the gift table. You know they're so proud of how you've handled everything. The next morning, I stood in my kitchen again, but this time, it felt different. The early sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating both buildings, and the sidewalks were already busy with people heading to work and school. In a few hours, these same streets would be filled with family and friends, celebrating new life, new beginnings. My phone buzzed again, a message from my mother. Need help setting up? I brought the lemon squares and the recipe. I smiled, thinking of grandmother's words about stewardship and growth. Sometimes, standing your ground wasn't just about holding on to what was yours. It was about creating space for others to grow into better versions of themselves. Outside, the city was waking up. In a few hours, my home would be filled with the sounds of celebration of family trying to heal, a community coming together. The buildings stood strong and proud, just as they always had, but now they carried new stories, new dreams. That, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all. Looking at the two properties now, I understood what grandmother had known all along. It was never about keeping others out. It was about building something worth sharing, something worth preserving, a legacy not just of property, but of possibility. The morning sun made both buildings shine, gleaming like beacons in the first light of day. Below, Isabella was opening her shop. Mr. Chin was arranging books in his window, and Jessica was probably already up, arranging flowers for the shower. This was what victory truly looked like, not just winning a battle, but creating something better in its wake, something that would endure long after the conflicts were forgotten. I opened my group chat with Jessica and Isabella. Breakfast before the chaos begins? I'm making coffee. Their responses came quickly, warm and enthusiastic. In my kitchen, I started the coffee maker, pulled out fresh pastries, and opened the windows to let in the morning air. This was home not just to the apartment, but the whole community we had built. And this time, it was built on a foundation strong enough to last. What do you do when your own family tries to take everything from you, even your home, and you're left to rebuild from the ground up? Do you fight, or do you let them take what's yours? For Emily, that moment came when her mother and brother sold her home, the very apartment where she had built her business, cared for her grandmother, and created memories that could never be replaced. But Emily didn't crumble. Instead, she stood her ground, bringing out the deed to the property, a document that shifted the power in the room. What they thought they owned, they never had, and Emily had proof. When she revealed her grandmother's plan, her family's reaction was predictable anger, disbelief, and threats of legal action. But Emily didn't let that stop her. She offered Jessica, her brother's wife, a way out, a chance to rent the apartment next door. Not as a family favor, but as a business arrangement. Jessica, for the first time, stood up to her husband and mother-in-law, choosing her own path over their manipulation. The turning point came when Emily's grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. Emily had been prepared, and that readiness not only protected her, but it also offered a new beginning for Jessica. Through her actions, Emily broke the cycle of control and manipulation that had held her family hostage for years. So, what do you think? Was Emily right to confront her family, or should she have just let it go and walked away? Have you ever had to stand up to your family, even when it felt impossible? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found this story empowering, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
You think you can buy love, Vivian? All you know is how to write checks. Ember's words cut deep as she smirks at me, her hand possessively clutching my husband Ashton's arm. Ashton deserves a woman who appreciates his talent, not some workaholic hag. I stare at my husband in disbelief. Surely he'll defend me, tell Ember she's out of line. But instead he pulls her closer, his eyes cold as they meet mine. I want a divorce, Vivian. And I'm keeping the restaurant. It's the least you owe me for wasting my youth. His words slice through me like a knife. This can't be happening. I think back to when we first met. Me, a rising corporate lawyer, him, a charming bartender at the swanky lounge I frequented after long days at the firm. He had dreams of becoming a chef, and I believed in him. I paid for his culinary school, poured my savings into launching his restaurant. And this is how he repays me? Ember's victorious grin ignites a fury within me. They want to play dirty? Fine. Game on. They have no idea who they're messing with. I'm Vivian Sinclair, and I never lose. 5 years ago, things were so different. Ashton and I were deeply in love, or so I thought. We'd spend hours talking about his dreams of opening a world-class restaurant. You make the money, I'll make the magic, he'd say with a wink. And like a fool, I believed him. I worked tirelessly, climbing the corporate ladder to afford the life we dreamed of together. The long hours paid off when I made junior partner. To celebrate, I surprised Ashton with a check, enough to cover his culinary school tuition and then some. He swept me into his arms, peppering my face with kisses. "You're my angel investor," he murmured. "I'll make you so proud." And he did, graduating top of his class. Buoyed by his success, I took out a business loan and signed a lease on a prime location downtown. Ashton's Bistro was born, and my husband was the toast of the town. Critics raved, reservations were booked months in advance. I beamed with pride at every accolade. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Late nights at the firm meant missed dinners, forgotten anniversaries. "You're never here, Vivian," Ashton would complain. "I feel like I'm married to your job." So I scaled back at work, started taking cooking classes at the restaurant to spend more time with him. That's where I met Ember, a lively young food blogger with a magnetic personality. She was everything I wasn't, carefree, fun, passionate about food. We bonded over Ashton's culinary genius, and I was grateful to have a new friend. How naive I was. The signs were all there, I just didn't want to see them. The hushed phone calls, the late nights at the restaurant. "Oh, Vivian, you're just being paranoid," Ashton would assure me. Ember is a business contact, nothing more. Nothing more, indeed. The image of them tangled in our bed, clothes strewn across the floor, is seared into my brain. And now they have the audacity to ambush me in my own home, demanding I hand over everything I've worked for. They think they've won, but the game is just beginning. I'll show them what happens when you cross Vivian Sinclair. My dear husband and his mistress picked the wrong woman to mess with. They'll rue the day they betrayed me. I straighten my spine, a cold smile spreading across my lips as I stare them down. "Enjoy your little victory," I say, my voice dripping with venom. "It won't last long. I'll destroy you both, even if it's the last thing I do." The betrayal stings like a fresh wound as I throw myself into work, desperate to ignore the growing distance between Ashton and me. Late nights at the office become my refuge, a place to bury the pain and pretend everything's fine. But deep down, I know it's not. Ember's constant presence at the restaurant doesn't help. She's always there, flitting around Ashton, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm. It makes me sick to see how close they've become. One evening, I decide to surprise Ashton with a romantic dinner at home. I slave over a gourmet meal, light candles, put on a slinky dress, but when he walks in, he barely notices. "What's all this?" he asks, his tone more annoyed than appreciative. I thought we could have a nice night in, I say, forcing a smile. Just the two of us, he shrugs. I'm beat, Viv. It's been a long day at the restaurant. Ember and I were experimenting with some new recipes and lost track of time. There it is again. Ember. Always Ember. I bite back a retort and try to salvage the evening. Well, I made your favorite, truffle risotto with seared scallops. Come, sit down and relax. But the meal is tense, the conversation stilted. Ashton picks at his food, his mind clearly elsewhere. I want to scream, to demand he pay attention to me, but I don't. I just sip my wine and pretend everything's perfect. Later, as I'm clearing the dishes, I overhear Ashton on the phone in the next room. I can't do this anymore, he's saying, his voice low. I feel trapped, unappreciated. She doesn't understand me like you do. My heart clenches. He's talking to her. I know it. Part of me wants to confront him, but I'm afraid of what he'll say, afraid of losing him. Instead, I bury myself in work, taking on more cases, logging longer hours. My best friend Nadia grows concerned. You need to do something, Viv. But she urges over lunch one day. Hire a private investigator. Find out the truth. You can't keep living like this. But I brush off her suggestion. It's just a rough patch, I insist. Every marriage has them. We'll get through it. Even as I say the words, I know I'm lying to myself. The cracks are widening, the foundation crumbling. And then one night, I find a text from Ember on Ashton's phone. I can't wait to taste your new creation, it reads, followed by a winking emoji. My blood boils. I confront Ashton, waving the phone in his face. What the hell is this? I demand. He snatches the phone from my hand, his face twisting in anger. It's business, Vivian. God, you're so paranoid. Ember's helping me develop new menu items. That's it. Don't lie to me, I hiss. I see how you two are together. The secret glances, the inside jokes. You're sleeping with her, aren't you? Ashton scoffs. You're delusional. Maybe if you spent more time being a wife and less time being a lawyer, you wouldn't have these crazy ideas. His words are like a slap. I recoil, tears stinging my eyes. I've given you everything, Ashton, my love, my support, my money, and this is how you repay me? He just shakes his head. I'm done with this conversation. I'm going to the restaurant to clear my head. Don't wait up. As the door slams behind him, I crumple to the floor, sobbing. How did we get here? What happened to the man I married, the love we shared? I know I can't keep living in denial. Nadia's right. I need answers. With shaking hands, I dial the number of a well-known private investigator. It's time to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. If Ashton thinks he can betray me and walk away unscathed, he's got another thing coming. I'll find out exactly what he's been up to with Ember. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. The private investigator's report confirms my worst fears. Grainy photos of Ashton and Ember, caught in intimate embraces, secret rendezvous at her apartment. The evidence is undeniable. My husband is having an affair. I confront him that evening, slamming the photos down on the kitchen counter. Care to explain these? I ask, my voice trembling with rage. Ashton barely glances at the pictures. Where did you get those? Have you been spying on me? Don't try to turn this around on me, I snap. You're the one screwing your little food blogger behind my back. He has the audacity to roll his eyes. It's not what you think, Vivian. Ember and I, we have a connection. She understands my passion for food, my dreams. She supports me in ways you never have. Supports you? I laugh bitterly. I'm the one who paid for your culinary school, bankrolled your precious restaurant. I've supported you every step of the way. With money, sure, but emotionally? You're never there, Viv. Always working, always too busy for me. Ember makes me feel alive, appreciated. His words cut deep, but I refuse to let him see how much he's hurting me. If you're so unhappy, why stay with me? Why not just ask for a divorce? Ashton smirks. And give up the cushy life you provide? The fancy apartment, the expensive toys? I'm not stupid, Vivian. I know a good thing when I have it. Rage boils inside me. So you thought you could have your cake and eat it too? Keep me around to foot the bills while you screw your mistress on the side? It's not like that, he insists, but I can see the lie in his eyes. Get out, I hiss. Get out of my house, my life. I never want to see you again. Ashton shrugs. Fine, but don't think you're getting rid of me that easily. I have just as much right to the restaurant, to everything we've built together, and I'll fight you for it. He storms out, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, hot tears streaming down my face. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? I trusted him, loved him, and all along he was betraying me. Nadia comes over that night, a bottle of wine in hand. "I'm so sorry, Viv," she says, hugging me tight. "I knew something was off with Ashton, but I never imagined." "He's been cheating on me with Ember," I choke out. "He wants a divorce, says he's entitled to half of everything, the restaurant, our assets, all of it." Nadia's eyes flash with anger. "Like hell he is. We'll make him pay for what he's done to you, Viv. He doesn't deserve a cent." I nod, wiping away my tears. "You're right. It's time to stop crying and start fighting. Ashton wants to play dirty? Well, two can play at that game." The next morning, I march into my lawyer's office, the investigator's report clutched in my hand. "I want to file for divorce," I tell him, "and I want you to find any dirt you can on my husband, dig into his finances, his business dealings. I have a feeling he's hiding something." My lawyer nods. "Consider it done. We'll make sure you come out on top, Vivian. He won't know what hit him." As I leave the office, a sense of cold determination settles over me. Ashton thinks he can destroy me, but he's underestimated the woman he married. I built him up from nothing, and now I'll tear him down just as easily. He and Ember want a war? They've got one. And I never lose a fight. They'll both pay for their betrayal, one way or another. I'll make sure of it. The divorce proceedings are ugly, a bitter battle of he said, she said. Ashton paints me as a cold, unloving workaholic, while I expose his infidelity and financial improprieties. My lawyer uncovers evidence of Ashton's embezzlement from the restaurant, funneling money into a secret account to fund his lavish gifts for Ember. Armed with this information, we negotiate a favorable settlement. Ashton walks away with nothing. No stake in the restaurant, no alimony, just the clothes on his back and his precious mistress by his side. But my victory is short-lived. Ashton and Ember launch a smear campaign against me, trashing my reputation to anyone who will listen. They post vicious lies on social media, accusing me of being a ruthless gold digger who never loved Ashton, only his potential for success. Their words sting, but I hold my head high. I know the truth, and so do those closest to me. Nadia stands firmly by my side, a fierce ally in the face of their cruelty. At the restaurant, I waste no time cleaning house. I fire Ashton and Ember on the spot, relishing the shock and outrage on their faces as I have security escort them from the premises. "You can't do this," Ashton sputters. "This is my restaurant, my dream." "Not anymore," I say coldly. "You lost the right to call it yours the moment you betrayed me. Now get out of my sight before I have you both arrested for trespassing." Ember hurls obscenities at me as they're dragged away, but I don't flinch. Let them spew their venom. They're powerless now, nothing more than a footnote in my life. With Ashton and Ember gone, I pour my energy into revamping the restaurant. I hire a talented new head chef, update the menu, and rebrand the entire concept. Ashton's Bistro becomes Vivian's, a chic and modern eatery that quickly gains buzz among the city's foodies. The grand reopening is a smash success, with lines out the door and glowing reviews from critics. As I mingle with the guests, accepting their congratulations and well wishes, I feel a sense of pride and vindication. I built this place, made it thrive, and I did it all without Ashton. But my triumph is tempered by whispers of Ashton and Ember's latest antics. They've been blacklisted from every reputable restaurant in town, reduced to working in seedy dives and fast food joints. Part of me feels a twinge of pity, but I quickly push it aside. They brought this on themselves with their lies and betrayal. Months pass, and Vivian's goes from strength to strength. We expand to a second location, then a third. I become a fixture on the city's culinary scene, sought after for interviews and partnerships. And then one day I spot a familiar face in the crowd at a food festival. Ashton, looking haggard and defeated, Ember clinging to his arm like a lifeline. They catch my eye, and I see the flash of anger and resentment in their gazes. "Well, well," Ember sneers, "if it isn't the great Vivian Sinclair, lording her success over the little people." "You ruined our lives," Ashton spits. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I regard them coolly. "You ruined your own lives," I say. "I just stopped letting you ruin mine." They lunge at me then, hurling insults and accusations, but security quickly intervenes. As they're dragged away screaming and cursing my name, I feel a weight lift from my shoulders. I'm free of them, I realize. Free of their toxicity, their lies, their manipulation. I've built a new life for myself, one filled with success and purpose, and they have no power over me anymore. Let them wallow in their misery, their bitterness. I'm done being dragged down by their darkness. I have a bright future ahead of me, and I intend to make the most of every moment. I walk away from the festival with my head held high, ready to embrace whatever challenges and triumphs lie ahead. I am Vivian Sinclair, and I am unbreakable. The success of Vivian's is a balm to my battered soul. As the restaurant thrives, expanding to new locations across the city, I throw myself into my work with renewed passion. It's a welcome distraction from the pain of Ashton's betrayal, a way to channel my anger into something productive. But even as I bask in the glow of my achievements, I can't shake the desire for revenge. I want Ashton and Ember to suffer, to feel the same humiliation and despair they inflicted on me. My opportunity arrives in the form of a high-profile food festival where Vivian's has been invited to showcase our signature dishes. As I'm prepping my team for the event, I overhear a startling conversation between two of my sous chefs. "Did you hear about Ashton Sinclair?" one of them whispers. Apparently, he and that blogger chick have been blacklisted from every decent restaurant in the city. No one will hire them after the stunt they pulled with Vivian. "Serves them right," the other chef scoffs. "I heard they're barely scraping by, working dead-end jobs and living in some dump of an apartment." A thrill of vindication runs through me. So the mighty have fallen. Ashton and Ember, once the darlings of the culinary scene, now reduced scraping the bottom of the barrel. But it's not enough. I want to see their downfall for myself, to revel in their misery. And what better place to do it than at the food festival, where the cream of the crop will be gathered to celebrate the city's finest cuisine. I make some discreet inquiries and discover that Ashton and Ember have indeed hit rock bottom. They're working as lowly prep cooks at a seedy diner, barely making ends meet. The image of them toiling away in a greasy kitchen, their dreams of culinary stardom shattered, fills me with a perverse sense of satisfaction. On the day of the festival, I arrive early to oversee the setup of the Vivian's booth. As I'm arranging our artfully plated creations, I catch a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. Ashton, looking haggard and defeated, Ember clinging to his arm like a desperate barnacle. Our eyes meet, and I see the flash of recognition, followed by pure, unadulterated loathing. They make a beeline for me, pushing through the throng of festival-goers with single-minded determination. "Well, well, well," Ember sneers as they approach. "If it isn't the great Vivian Sinclair lording her success over the little people. Come to gloat, have you?" I regard them coolly, taking in their shabby appearance and the bitter lines etched into their faces. "I'm here to showcase my restaurant," I say evenly. "What brings you two to the festival? Surely you're not here to sample the gourmet offerings." Ashton's face twists into an ugly scowl. "You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? Ruining our lives, blacklisting us from the industry. Are you happy now, Vivian? Is this what you wanted?" I feel a flare of anger at his accusation. "You ruined your own lives," I snap. "I didn't force you to cheat, to lie, to betray me. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences." Ember lets out a shrill laugh. "Consequences? Is that what you call it? You destroyed us, Vivian. You took everything we had and ground it into dust. And you took everything I had and stomped on it without a second thought," I retort. "My love, my trust, my marriage, you betrayed me in the worst possible way, and for what? A cheap fling and some ego boost?" Ashton's face reddens with rage. "You never appreciated me," he snarls, "never supported my dreams. Ember understands me in ways you never could." I shake my head in disbelief. "I gave you everything, Ashton. My heart, my money, my unwavering support, and you threw it all away for a piece of ass. Well, I hope she was worth it, because now you have nothing, no restaurant, no reputation, no future, and you have no one to blame but yourselves." With that, I turn on my heel and walk away, leaving them sputtering with impotent fury. Let them stew in their own misery, I think. They've reaped what they sowed, and I wash my hands of them both. As I return to the Vivian's booth, head held high, I feel a sense of closure wash over me. I've confronted my demons and emerged victorious. Ashton and Ember are nothing more than a bitter memory now, a cautionary tale of what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. I am Vivian Sinclair, restaurateur extraordinaire, and I bow to no one, least of all a pair of backstabbing traitors who thought they could bring me down. I've risen from the ashes of their betrayal, and I will continue to soar. Nothing and no one can stop me now. The food festival marks a turning point in my life. With Ashton and Ember's public humiliation, I feel a sense of closure, a readiness to move on from the pain of their betrayal. I throw myself into my work with renewed vigor, determined to make Vivian's the most acclaimed restaurant in the city. And it pays off. Within months, we're booked solid every night, with a waitlist stretching weeks in advance. Critics rave about our innovative menu and impeccable service, and I become a regular fixture on the culinary scene, sought after for interviews and collaborations. But even as I bask in my success, I can't help but keep tabs on Ashton and Ember. Call it morbid curiosity, but I need to know just how far they've fallen. Through the grapevine, I learned that they've been blacklisted from every reputable restaurant in town. No one wants to be associated with the scandalous couple who betrayed the beloved Vivian Sinclair. They're forced to take whatever scraps they can get, working menial jobs in fast food joints and seedy diners. A part of me feels a twinge of pity for them. After all, I once loved Ashton deeply, and I can't forget the good times we shared. But then I remember the pain they caused me, the callous way they discarded our marriage, and any sympathy I might have felt evaporates like mist in the sun. Let them suffer, I think. Let them feel a fraction of the heartbreak and humiliation they inflicted on me. It's no less than they deserve. As the months pass, I hear whispers of their increasingly desperate situation. They've been evicted from their apartment, unable to make rent on their meager wages. They're living out of Ember's beat-up old car, sneaking into shelters for meals and showers. It's a far cry from the lavish lifestyle they once enjoyed, funded by my hard work and sacrifices. The irony is not lost on me. One evening, as I'm leaving the restaurant after a particularly grueling shift, I spot a familiar figure huddled in the alley behind the building. It's Ashton, looking gaunt and filthy, his once pristine chef's white stained and tattered. He looks up at me with bloodshot eyes, a mixture of shame and resentment on his haggard face. "Come to gloat?" he rasps, his voice rough from disuse. I shake my head. "I take no pleasure in your suffering, Ashton. Despite what you may think, I never wanted this for you." He lets out a bitter laugh. "Could have fooled me. You took everything from us, Vivian. Our jobs, our reputations, our future. You ruined our lives." I feel a flare of anger at his accusation. "You ruined your own lives," I snap. "I didn't force you to cheat, to lie, to betray me. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences." Ashton's face twists into a sneer. "Consequences? Is that what you call it? We're living on the streets, Vivian, begging for scraps like dogs. Is this the revenge you wanted? To see us reduced to nothing?" I take a deep breath, trying to calm the rage simmering in my veins. "I never wanted revenge, Ashton. I wanted justice. I wanted you to feel a fraction of the pain you caused me, to understand the magnitude of your betrayal. But I never wished for this. I never wanted to see you destroyed." He scoffs. "Could have fooled me." I sigh, suddenly feeling very tired. "Think what you want, Ashton. But know this, I've moved on. I've built a new life for myself, one that doesn't include you or Ember. And I'm happy, truly happy, for the first time in years." I turn to walk away, but his voice stops me. "Vivian, wait." I glance back over my shoulder, seeing a flicker of the man I once loved in his haunted eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispers, "for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." I nod, a lump forming in my throat. "I appreciate that, Ashton. But you're right, it doesn't change anything. We can't go back to what we were. That life is over." With that, I walk away, leaving him slumped in the alley. As I climb into my car and drive off into the night, I feel a sense of closure wash over me. The anger and pain that have fueled me for so long begin to dissipate, replaced by a newfound sense of peace. I have survived the worst betrayal imaginable, and I have emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I am Vivian Sinclair, and I am finally free. With Ashton's apology still ringing in my ears, I throw myself into expanding Vivian's empire. We open new locations across the city, each one more successful than the last. My name becomes synonymous with culinary excellence, and I'm hailed as a visionary in the industry. But my success is about more than just personal achievement. I want to use my platform to make a difference, to empower other women who have faced adversity and betrayal. I start a mentorship program for aspiring female chefs, offering guidance and support as they navigate the cutthroat world of professional kitchens. I also partner with local women's shelters, donating a portion of Vivian's profits to help survivors of domestic abuse rebuild their lives. It's deeply fulfilling work, and it gives me a sense of purpose beyond the daily grind of running a restaurant. I feel like I'm making a real difference in people's lives, using my own pain and struggle as a catalyst for positive change. But even as I bask in the glow of my newfound purpose, I can't help but think of Ashton and Ember. Despite everything they've done, a part of me still feels a twinge of pity for them. I know firsthand how easy it is to get caught up in the allure of success, to let ego and ambition cloud your judgment. And while I can never forgive their betrayal, I can't help but wonder if they truly understood the consequences of their actions. Through the grapevine, I hear that they've hit rock bottom, blacklisted from the industry, drowning in debt, and struggling with addiction. They're a cautionary tale of what happens when you let greed and selfishness consume you. A part of me wants to reach out, to offer some kind of olive branch, but I know it's not my responsibility to save them from themselves. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the fallout. Instead, I focus on my own healing, on building a life that is authentic and fulfilling. I surround myself with people who lift me up, who support my dreams and celebrate my successes. Nadia becomes my rock, my confidant, and my sounding board. She's there for me through every triumph and setback, always ready with a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on. Together, we host lavish charity events at Vivian's, raising money and awareness for causes close to our hearts. I speak openly about my own experiences, hoping to inspire others to find strength in the face of adversity. And slowly but surely, I feel the wounds of Ashton's betrayal begin to heal. The pain and anger that once consumed me fade into the background, replaced by a sense of peace and purpose. I know I'll never forget what he did, but I refuse to let it define me. I am more than the sum of my scars, more than the product of someone else's cruelty. I am Vivian Sinclair, a survivor, a fighter, and a force to be reckoned with. And I will spend the rest of my life using my voice and my platform to lift up others, to create a world where no one has to suffer in silence. As I stand on the balcony of my penthouse apartment, looking out over the twinkling lights of the city, I feel a sense of gratitude wash over me. I have lost much, but I have gained so much more. I have found my purpose, my passion, and my power. And I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I have the strength and resilience to overcome them. Let Ashton and Ember wallow in their misery, their regret. I have moved on, focused on building a life that is rich in love, purpose, and meaning. I am Vivian Sinclair, and I am unstoppable. I can't believe you, Zara. I slave away at work all day to come home to this slop? Ethan hurled his plate at the wall, shattering it. I flinched, my voice quivering. I'm sorry. I had a migraine today, and... Excuses. That's all I ever hear from you, Ethan sneered, his face contorted with rage. You're lucky I even married you, considering how plain and unremarkable you are. His words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. I met Ethan 3 years ago when I started working as a receptionist at his law firm. Despite my quiet nature and average looks, he pursued me relentlessly, showering me with compliments and grand romantic gestures. Swept up in the whirlwind of his charm, I fell head over heels. Our courtship was a fairy tale, but reality set in soon after we exchanged vows. Ethan convinced me to quit my job, insisting that he wanted me to focus on being the perfect housewife. I agreed, eager to please him and build our life together. But 3 months into our marriage, Ethan's true colors began to show. He nitpicked every aspect of my homemaking, from the way I folded his laundry to the seasoning in my cooking. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Honestly, Zara, sometimes I wonder why I bother coming home at all, Ethan sighed dramatically, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. You can't even handle the most basic tasks. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I'm trying my best, Ethan. It's just been a difficult day and... Oh, spare me the pity party, he scoffed, rolling his eyes. You don't know what a difficult day is. You sit around this apartment all day, doing God knows what, while I'm out there busting my ass to provide for us. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. It was Ethan's idea for me to quit my job in the first place, yet he never missed an opportunity to throw my unemployment in my face. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my frayed nerves. I appreciate everything you do for us, Ethan. I'll try harder, I promise. You better, he warned, his tone icy. I didn't marry you for your scintillating conversation, Zara. The least you can do is keep the house in order and put a decent meal on the table. With that, he stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest as silent sobs racked my body. How had my life come to this? What happened to the charming, attentive man I fell in love with? As I sat there, surrounded by the shards of the shattered plate, I couldn't help but feel like they were a metaphor for my marriage. What once seemed so perfect and promising was now broken beyond repair, and I was left to pick up the pieces, alone and disillusioned. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's verbal abuse only escalated. He seemed to take sadistic pleasure in tearing me down, finding fault in every aspect of my existence. "Zara, have you gained weight?" he asked one evening, eyeing me critically as I set the table for dinner. "You're looking a bit softer these days." I glanced down at my body, suddenly self-conscious. "I don't think so. I've been eating the same as always." Ethan smirked, a cruel glint in his eye. "Well, maybe that's the problem. You're not exactly active, are you? Sitting around the house all day, it's no wonder you're turning into a blob." His words stung, but I tried to brush them off. "I'll start going for walks in the evenings," I offered, hoping to appease him. "Don't bother," he scoffed. "It's not like it'll make much difference. You'll always be plain old Zara, no matter how much you try to improve yourself." I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to defend myself. I knew from experience that arguing with Ethan only made things worse. As I served him his meal, he took one bite and grimaced. "Christ, Zara, is this what you call dinner? It's like eating cardboard." "I followed the recipe exactly," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I thought you liked chicken parmesan." "I like it when it's cooked properly," he retorted, shoving the plate away. "This is inedible. Honestly, I don't know why I keep you around. You're useless as a wife and homemaker." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "I'm sorry," I whispered, gathering up his plate. "I'll make something else." "Don't bother," he sneered, standing up from the table. "I've lost my appetite. I'm going out." He grabbed his coat and keys, slamming the front door behind him. I knew he was likely heading to a bar or to meet up with one of his colleagues. It wasn't unusual for him to stay out late, leaving me alone with my thoughts and insecurities. As I cleaned up the kitchen, my mind wandered to happier times. I thought about my old job at the law firm, how fulfilling it had been to contribute and feel valued. I missed the camaraderie of my coworkers, the sense of purpose I felt every day. But Ethan had convinced me to give all that up. "I make more than enough money for both of us," he'd said. "I want you to focus on making our home a haven, a place where I can relax and unwind after a long day at work." At the time, it had sounded romantic, the idea of being a devoted housewife. But now I realized how much I had sacrificed for a man who didn't appreciate me, who seemed to delight in my misery. Late that night, as I lay in bed alone, I heard Ethan stumble in, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He collapsed onto the bed beside me, snoring loudly, not even bothering to undress. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, a hollow feeling in my chest. Was this what my life had become? A series of endless days, catering to a man who treated me like dirt with no escape in sight? I knew I should leave, that I deserved better than this. But a part of me still clung to the hope that Ethan would change, that he'd go back to being the charming, loving man I'd married. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come, and my illusions were about to be shattered in the most devastating way possible. It was a typical Sunday afternoon, and I was doing laundry, trying to keep myself busy and distracted from the constant tension that hung over our household. As I emptied Ethan's pockets before tossing his pants into the washing machine, his phone tumbled out, landing on the floor with a clatter. I picked it up, intending to place it on the counter, when a message flashed across the screen. It was from Valerie, Ethan's secretary at the law firm. I hesitated for a moment, knowing I shouldn't pry, but something compelled me to open the message. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Valerie, scantily clad and posed provocatively, accompanied by a text that left little to the imagination. "Can't wait for round 2, baby. Last night was incredible." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands shook as I scrolled through the message history, each exchange more explicit than the last. It was clear that Ethan and Valerie were having an affair, and from the looks of it, it had been going on for months. Rage and betrayal coursed through my veins. How could he do this to me? After everything I'd sacrificed for him, all the abuse I'd endured, he had the audacity to cheat on me with his secretary? I heard the front door open and Ethan's footsteps in the hallway. I stormed out of the laundry room, his phone clutched in my hand, ready to confront him. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, thrusting the phone in his face. Ethan's eyes widened for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. "What are you doing snooping through my phone, Zara? That's private." "Private?" I laughed bitterly. "You're screwing your secretary, and you have the nerve to talk about privacy." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what it looks like. It's just harmless flirting, nothing more." "Don't lie to me," I screamed, hot tears streaming down my face. "I saw the messages, the photos. How long has this been going on?" Ethan's face hardened, his eyes turning cold. "Fine, you want the truth? Yes, I've been sleeping with Valerie, but can you blame me? Look at you, Zara. You're a pathetic excuse for a wife. I only married you because I thought you'd be easy to control, but even that's proving to be more trouble than it's worth." His words hit me like a slap in the face. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. "You never loved me," I whispered, the realization dawning on me. This whole marriage was a sham. Ethan smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Oh, don't act so surprised. Did you really think someone like me would genuinely fall for someone like you? You were a means to an end, Zara, a convenient little wife to keep the house clean and warm my bed at night, but even you couldn't get that right." I felt like I was going to be sick. The man I had loved, the man I had given up everything for, was nothing more than a manipulative, cheating bastard. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and grief. "I'm leaving, and I'm filing for divorce." Ethan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Go ahead. But remember, Zara, you're nothing without me. You have no job, no skills, no prospects. Good luck finding someone else to put up with your pathetic existence." I didn't bother responding. I grabbed a suitcase and started packing, throwing in clothes and essentials with trembling hands. I couldn't spend another minute in this house, with this man who had shattered my heart and my illusions. As I walked out the door, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, tinged with the bitterness of betrayal. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but anything was better than staying in a marriage built on lies and manipulation. It was time to pick up the pieces of my life and start anew, far away from Ethan and the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. With my marriage in shambles and my heart in pieces, I found myself on my sister's doorstep, suitcase in hand. She took one look at my tear-stained face and pulled me into a tight hug, ushering me inside without a word. Over the next few days, I poured out my story to her, recounting every painful detail of Ethan's betrayal and the emotional abuse I had endured. She listened patiently, offering comfort and support, her anger at Ethan's actions simmering just beneath the surface. "You can stay here as long as you need," she assured me. "We'll get you back on your feet, Zara. You're stronger than you know." With her encouragement, I started looking for work, determined to regain my independence. I landed a job as a waitress at a high-end bistro, the kind of place Ethan and his colleagues would often frequent for business lunches. At first, I was nervous, worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the fast-paced environment and demanding customers. But as the weeks passed, I found myself thriving in the role, my natural warmth and attentiveness shining through. The regular customers began to take notice, complimenting me on my service and friendly demeanor. "You always manage to brighten my day, Zara," one elderly gentleman said, patting my hand as I refilled his coffee. "You have a real gift for making people feel welcome." Their kind words were a balm to my battered self-esteem, slowly helping me rebuild the confidence Ethan had systematically torn down. I started to see myself in a new light, not as the worthless, unlovable woman he had made me believe I was, but as someone with value and purpose. One evening, as I was clearing tables after a particularly busy shift, my manager pulled me aside. "Zara, I just wanted to let you know how impressed I am with your work," he said, smiling warmly. "You've become an integral part of our team, and the customers adore you. Keep up the great work." I thanked him, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly good at something, that I had a place where I belonged. As I walked home that night, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come in such a short time. Just a few months ago, I had been a broken shell of a woman, convinced that I was nothing without Ethan. But now, I was standing on my own 2 feet, building a life for myself that had nothing to do with him. When I arrived at my sister's apartment, I found a large envelope waiting for me on the kitchen table. My heart sank as I recognized Ethan's handwriting, and with trembling fingers I tore it open. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Ethan. A note was attached, his words dripping with disdain. "I've made it easy for you, Zara. Just sign on the dotted line, and you'll be free of me. Not that anyone else would want you, but at least you won't be my problem anymore." I stared at the papers, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Relief that I could finally sever ties with the man who had caused me so much pain. Anger at the callous way he dismissed our marriage, and a tiny lingering sense of sadness for the love I had once believed we shared. But as I picked up the pen and signed my name, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was no longer Ethan's wife, no longer bound to a man who had never truly loved me. I was Zara, a woman with her own strength, her own worth, and a future that was mine to shape. I slid the papers back into the envelope, sealing it with a sense of finality. Tomorrow I would mail them to Ethan's lawyer, and my new life would truly begin. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. A few weeks after I sent the signed divorce papers, I decided to visit the apartment Ethan and I had once shared to collect the last of my belongings. As I stepped inside, a flood of memories washed over me, both good and bad. I pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. I was just finishing up when I heard the front door slam open. I spun around to see Ethan standing there, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled, storming towards me. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm just getting the rest of my things, Ethan. I have every right to be here." "Like hell you do," he shouted, grabbing my arm roughly. "This is my apartment, Zara. You have no claim to it anymore." I yanked my arm free, glaring at him. "Actually, Ethan, this apartment has always been in my name. My grandparents gave it to me as a gift, remember? You never had any legal right to it." His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. But it was quickly replaced by fury. "You can't just sell it without my consent," he bellowed. "I won't let you get away with this, Zara. I'll take you to court and make your life a living hell." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Go ahead, Ethan. Take me to court. I'm sure the judge would love to hear about your infidelity and emotional abuse. I have plenty of evidence to back up my claims." He opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, the front door opened again. We both turned to see Valerie standing there, her eyes wide with shock. "Ethan, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. I smiled coldly. "Hello, Valerie. I see you two are still going strong. I hope you know what you're getting into with this one." Valerie's gaze darted between Ethan and me, confusion and fear written all over her face. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" Ethan's face paled, and he took a step towards her. "Valerie, baby, it's not what it looks like. Zara and I are just having a little disagreement about the apartment. It's nothing to worry about." I scoffed. "A little disagreement? Is that what you call it when you ambush your ex-wife and try to intimidate her into giving up her property?" Valerie's eyes narrowed and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Ethan, I think you have some explaining to do." I picked up my box of belongings and brushed past them, pausing in the doorway. "You two deserve each other," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "But Valerie, if I were you, I'd watch my back. Ethan has a habit of lying and cheating to get what he wants." With that, I walked out, leaving them to their own devices. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. I had stood up to Ethan, had shown him that I was no longer the meek, submissive woman he had married. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let him push me around anymore. As I made my way back to my sister's apartment, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Ethan's manipulation, free from his constant criticism and abuse. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had survived Ethan's betrayal, had picked up the pieces of my shattered life, and put them back together. And now I was ready to start a new chapter, one where I was in control of my own destiny. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was never going to let anyone treat me the way Ethan had ever again. I was done being a victim, done being a doormat. From now on, I was going to stand up for myself and fight for the life I deserved, and heaven help anyone who tried to stand in my way. A few days after the confrontation at the apartment, I received a call from an old coworker at the law firm. She had overheard Ethan spinning a tale to Valerie about moving into his family's luxurious vacation home, and she couldn't help but reach out to me. "Zara, I know it's none of my business, but I thought you should know," she said, her voice laced with concern. "Ethan is lying to Valerie about his living situation. I've seen the place he's talking about, and it's a far cry from the mansion he's describing." I thanked her for the information, a plan already forming in my mind. I knew Ethan's lies were going to catch up with him sooner or later, and I was determined to be the one to expose him. I dug through my old files until I found a photo of the actual vacation home, a rundown shack that was barely habitable. Armed with this evidence, I made my way to the law firm, determined to confront Ethan and Valerie. As I walked into the office, I saw them standing together by the water cooler, laughing and flirting as if they didn't have a care in the world. I marched up to them, a smile plastered on my face. "Ethan, Valerie, so good to see you both," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. They turned to face me, Ethan's eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What are you doing here, Zara? I thought I made it clear that I didn't want you around." I ignored him, turning to Valerie. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the vacation home, Valerie. It sounds absolutely lovely, but I think there's something you should see." I pulled out the photo of the shack, holding it up for her to see. "This is the real vacation home, Valerie. The one Ethan has been lying to you about." Valerie's eyes widened, and she snatched the photo from my hand, studying it closely. "Ethan, what is this? You told me it was a luxury estate with a pool and a tennis court." Ethan's face paled, and he stammered, trying to come up with an explanation. But before he could speak, I pulled out my phone, playing a series of audio recordings. The recordings were of Ethan's raunchy encounters with various women at the office, evidence gathered by a fed-up coworker who had had enough of his misconduct. The sound of his grunts and moans filled the air, interspersed with the giggling and sighing of his conquests. Valerie's face turned bright red, and she rounded on Ethan, her eyes blazing with fury. "You bastard! You've been cheating on me this whole time, haven't you? With every woman in this damn office." Ethan held up his hands, trying to placate her. "Valerie, baby, it's not what it sounds like. I can explain." But Valerie wasn't having it. She slapped him hard across the face, leaving a bright red handprint on his cheek. "Save it, Ethan. I've heard enough. I'm going straight to HR and reporting your sorry ass for sexual harassment. We'll see how long you keep your job once they hear about this." She stormed off, leaving Ethan standing there, his mouth agape. He turned to me, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. "You bitch," he snarled, taking a step towards me. "You've ruined everything. I'll make you pay for this, Zara. I swear to God, I'll destroy you." I laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You've already destroyed me, Ethan. You took everything from me, my love, my trust, my self-respect. But now it's my turn. I'm going to watch you lose everything, just like I did, and I'm going to enjoy every damn minute of it." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out, before Ethan's web of lies unraveled completely, and when it did, I would be there to watch him fall. True to her word, Valerie marched straight into HR and reported Ethan's misconduct. She provided them with copies of the audio recordings I had shared, as well as her own testimony about his lies and infidelity. The fallout was swift and severe. Ethan was immediately suspended pending an investigation, and within a week, he was fired from the law firm. His reputation was in tatters, and word quickly spread throughout the legal community about his unethical behavior. I watched from the sidelines as Ethan's life unraveled, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. He had brought this upon himself, and now he was paying the price for his actions. But even in his downfall, Ethan couldn't let go of his ego. He showed up at my sister's apartment one evening, pounding on the door and demanding to see me. I opened the door warily, keeping the chain latched. "What do you want, Ethan?" He looked haggard and desperate, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. "Zara, please, you have to help me. I've lost everything, my job, my reputation, even Valerie. I have nowhere else to go." I stared at him incredulously. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've done, you have the nerve to come here and ask for my help?" He dropped to his knees, clasping his hands together in a gesture of supplication. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, Zara. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance." I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. "Ethan, I gave you more chances than you ever deserved. I put up with your abuse, your lies, your cheating, all because I loved you. But that love is gone now, and it's never coming back." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Zara, please, I know I can change. I'll be a better man, I swear it. Just don't leave me like this." I sighed, closing my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, my gaze was steady and resolute. "Ethan, I'm not leaving you. I've already left. I moved on with my life the moment I walked out of our apartment with divorce papers in hand." I reached behind the door and picked up a small box, handing it to him through the gap. "Here, I packed up the rest of your things from the apartment. Consider it my final act of kindness." He took the box, his hands shaking. "Zara, I held up a hand, cutting him off. "I don't want to hear it, Ethan. We're done. I'm done. I have a new life now, one that doesn't include you, and I suggest you start building one for yourself, because I won't be there to pick up the pieces anymore." With that, I shut the door, sliding the chain back into place. I leaned against it for a moment, taking a deep breath. I could hear Ethan on the other side, sobbing and pleading, but I tuned him out. I had meant what I said. I was done with Ethan, done with the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. I had fought too hard and come too far to let him drag me back down into the darkness. I pushed myself off the door and walked into the living room, where my sister was waiting with a cup of tea and a sympathetic ear. I sat down beside her, taking the mug and inhaling the comforting scent of chamomile. "You did the right thing, Zara," she said, squeezing my hand. "I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "I know, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I'm ready to move on, to start a new chapter in my life." She nodded, her eyes shining with love and understanding. "And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." I leaned my head on her shoulder, feeling grateful for her unwavering support. Together we sat in silence, sipping our tea and listening to the sound of Ethan's footsteps fading away into the night. A month had passed since I last saw Ethan, and my life had taken a turn for the better. I had accepted a dream job in Seattle, working as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a new life far away from the painful memories of my past. I was packing up the last of my belongings when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. "Zara, please, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice hoarse. I sighed, crossing my arms over my chest. "What do you want, Ethan? I thought I made it clear that we were done." He pushed past me, stumbling into the apartment. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and I wrinkled my nose in disgust. "I've lost everything, Zara," he slurred, collapsing onto the couch. "My job, my reputation, even my apartment. I've been sleeping on friends' couches and in my car. I'm drowning in debt, and I don't know what to do." I stared at him, feeling a mix of pity and revulsion. "I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan. But what do you want me to do about it? You brought this on yourself." He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. "I need you, Zara. I need you to give me another chance. I know I can change. I know I can be better. Just please, don't leave me like this." I shook my head, a sad smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Ethan, I've given you more chances than I can count, and every time you've let me down. You've hurt me in ways I never thought possible, and I can't go through that again. He reached for me, his hands shaking. But I love you, Zara. I've always loved you. We can make this work. I know we can. I stepped back out of his reach. No, Ethan, we can't. Because the truth is, you never loved me. You loved the idea of me, of having someone to control and manipulate. But that's not love, and it never will be. I walked over to the door, opening it wide. I think it's time for you to go, Ethan. I have a new life waiting for me, and you're not a part of it. He stumbled to his feet, his face twisted with anger and desperation. You can't do this to me, Zara. You can't just walk away like this. I smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. I can, and I am. Goodbye, Ethan. He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and despair. Then, without another word, he walked out the door and out of my life. I closed the door behind him, leaning against it for a moment. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I was free. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city skyline. In the distance, I could see the Space Needle, a symbol of the new life that awaited me. I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. I had a new job, a new city, and a new love waiting for me. A man I had met at the bistro, a kind and gentle soul who had helped me heal and find happiness again. I picked up my suitcase, taking one last look around the apartment. It had been my home for so long, but now it was time to say goodbye. I walked out the door feeling a sense of lightness and freedom. The past was behind me, and the future was bright with promise. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I couldn't help but smile. I had survived the worst that life had thrown at me, and I had come out stronger on the other side. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace the new chapter in my life with open arms. And as I walked down the street, I knew that nothing could ever hold me back again. You ungrateful bastard! I screamed at Dan, my voice dripping with venom. How could you do this to me after everything I've sacrificed for this family? Dan stood there, his face devoid of any remorse, clutching that cheap blonde bimbo's hand. I'm sorry, Sam, but I've fallen out of love with you. Amber understands me in a way you never could. I wanted to claw that smug look right off his face. Understands you? She's half your age and just using you for your money, you idiot! Amber batted her fake eyelashes. That's not true, Danny. I love you for who you are. She shot me a vindictive glare. Unlike your bitter, workaholic wife. The audacity of that gold-digging whore. I'd worked myself to the bone at that soulless corporate job to give Dan and our son Caleb a comfortable life. And this was how they repaid me? I can't believe you're taking her side, Caleb. I turned to my son, desperate for an ally. But he just shrugged, his eyes glazed over like he couldn't care less about my anguish. Dan stepped forward, his voice smug. It's over, Samantha. I want a divorce. I'm leaving you for Amber. Those words felt like a punch to the gut. After 25 years of marriage, he was just discarding me? Traded in for a younger model, like some rusty old car? White-hot rage boiled inside me. They wanted to play dirty? Fine, I'd make them regret the day they ever crossed Samantha Henderson. Squaring my shoulders, I met Dan's cold stare. You're going to wish you never betrayed me. I'll make sure you and your little tramp end up with nothing. I stared blankly at my computer screen, the numbers and figures blurring together as my mind drifted back to that awful night. Dan's callous words echoed endlessly, each replay feeling like a fresh wound. I'm leaving you for Amber. How could the man I devoted half my life to throw it all away for some cheap fling? We'd built this life together, the house, the savings, raising Caleb, and he just discarded it, discarded me. The shrill ring of my office phone mercifully pulled me back to reality. Henderson Accounting, this is Sam. Miss Henderson, your 3 o'clock is here to see you, my assistant's voice crackled through the line. Send them in, Janice. The door opened and a sharply dressed woman around my age stepped inside. She extended a perfectly manicured hand. Samantha? Hi, I'm Diane Locke, your attorney. I shook her hand, giving her a weary smile. Thanks for coming in on such short notice. Diane waved a dismissive hand as she took a seat across from me. Not a problem at all. Now, why don't you walk me through what's been happening? I recounted the whole sordid affair. Dan's betrayal, my deadbeat son's surprising lack of loyalty, Amber's transparent gold digging. As the words tumbled out, I could feel the anger building again, burning away the numbness. When I finally finished, Diane let out a heavy sigh and leaned forward. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Sam. Your husband is clearly in the wrong here, but I want you to know, we're going to fight this, and we're going to win." Her confidence was reassuring, fanning the flames of my own determination. "Damn right we are," I stated firmly. "That bastard and his whore want to play in the mud? They're going to regret ever crossing me." A slight smirk played across Diane's lips. "That's just what I like to hear. So where should we start?" I thought for a moment, then narrowed my eyes. "I want you to go over our finances with a fine-tooth comb. Every bank account, investment, asset. I need to know exactly what we're working with." Diane nodded slowly. "Consider it done. Anything else?" Meeting her gaze, I felt a surge of vindictive satisfaction. "Yeah, dig up every single shred of dirt you can find on Dan and his little mistress. Affair is just the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure." This time, Diane's smirk stretched into a full-blown grin. "Now you're speaking my language, Sam." As she began pulling out her laptop, I leaned back in my chair, a hard smile spreading across my own face. They had no idea what kind of hell they'd unleashed, but they were about to find out. I gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles turning white as I listened to the recording again. The unmistakable sounds of rustling sheets and breathy whispers filled my ear. "Oh, Dan, you feel so good inside me," a woman's sultry voice purred. I felt bile rise in my throat as Dan's husky chuckle responded. "You like that, baby? You're so tight." The lewd audio faded into a chorus of moans and the squeaking of a bed frame. I'd heard more than enough. Shaking with rage, I slammed the phone down and shot a venomous glare at Diane. "Well, you were right. There's no mistaking those voices. It's him and that little whore." My attorney's face was grim as she slowly nodded. "I'm so sorry, Sam, but this recording is rock-solid evidence of his affair. His disgusting, cheap affair with his 20-something secretary." I spat, fury coursing through my veins, "while I was at the office busting my ass to pay our bills." Diane placed a calming hand on my arm. "Just breathe, okay? We've got him dead to rights on this. It'll be a huge asset when we take him to court." "Court?" I laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'm going to destroy him well before this ever sees a courtroom." "What do you mean?" Snatching up the phone again, I rapidly punched in a number I knew by heart, Dan's office line at Hendricks & Co. After a few rings, his assistant picked up. "Hendricks & Co. Accounting, this is Gail speaking." Putting on my best sickly sweet voice, I purred, "Why, hello, Gail. This is Mrs. Henderson calling for my husband." "Oh, hello, Mrs. Henderson. One moment, please." The line clicked over to hold as I turned to Diane with a wicked grin. "Watch and learn." A few seconds later, Dan's confused voice came on the line. "Sam? What's going on? Everything okay?" "Everything's just peachy, Danny," I cooed in a sugary tone. "Although, I did have one little question for you." Okay. What's up?" Pausing for maximum impact, I stated calmly. "Does your secretary Amber usually join you for nooners in our marital bed? Because that's certainly what it sounds like on this charming little recording I have." Dead silence fell over the line as I let those words sink in. Finally, Dan sputtered. "Sam, I can explain." "Save it, you pathetic, cheating bastard," I roared, any hint of sweetness vanishing. "I hope you and your cheap whore were worth throwing away 25 years of marriage." Not waiting for a response, I slammed the phone down again, chest heaving. Diane was staring at me with a mixture of shock and admiration. "Well," she said slowly, "I'd say that's one way to get things moving." A savage grin spread across my face as I reveled in the sweet taste of revenge. The front door slammed open, and Dan stormed inside, his face beet red. "What the hell was that stunt you pulled at my office?" I calmly looked up from the kitchen table where I was reviewing some files. "Stunt?" I was simply asking my husband an innocent question. "Innocent?" He let out a mirthless laugh. "You ambushed me and broadcasted our private life to my entire office staff." Shrugging, I replied coolly, "Well, I had to find out the truth about your extracurricular activities somehow, since you clearly weren't going to be honest with me." Dan opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut him off. "Hey, what's with all the yelling?" We both turned to see Amber sauntering down the hallway, wearing one of my silk robes that clung obscenely to her curvaceous frame. She made a big show of draping herself all over Dan. "Oh, hey, babe," she purred, smirking at me. "I thought I heard some angry voices out here." White-hot rage lanced through me at the sight of this cheap hussy so brazenly making herself at home in my house. "Get your skanky paws off my husband, you little tramp!" Amber just sneered. "Ex-husband, I think you mean? Right, Danny?" To my horror, Dan simply nodded in agreement, not even looking at me as he pulled the whore closer. "Sam's right, babe. It's over between us. I'm leaving her, for you." The cruel finality of his words felt like a physical blow. My husband, the man I'd loved and supported for over 2 decades, was leaving me for this empty-headed bimbo? As if sensing my anguish, Caleb chose that moment to wander in, taking one look between us before siding with his father. "Finally did the right thing, Dad. Mom's been a total nag for years." The shock and betrayal were overwhelming. Even my own son was against me, after everything I'd sacrificed to give him a good life. Amber snickered victoriously. "Aw, what's the matter, Sammy? Gonna cry now that your family's abandoning your pathetic ass?" That mocking jab was the final straw. Letting out a primal scream of fury, I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy glass ashtray, and whipped it straight at the little bitch's head. Amber barely had time to register the shock on her face before the ashtray struck her squarely, sending her crumpling to the floor in an unconscious heap. "You crazy bitch!" Dan rushed to her side as Caleb just watched with wide eyes. Glaring at the both of them with pure loathing, I hissed, "Get that whore out of my house, and don't even think about coming back here yourselves." For once, Dan didn't argue. He simply gathered Amber's limp form and carried her out, Caleb reluctantly following behind. As the door slammed shut, I collapsed back into the chair, drained from the explosive confrontation. My body was shaking, my heart pounding in my ears. But through the haze of shock and anger, one thought rang out clearly. If it was war they wanted, it was war they'd get. I paced back and forth in Diane's office, my hands clenched into tight fists. I want to bleed him dry, you hear me? That lying, cheating scumbag doesn't deserve a penny after what he's done. My attorney watched me cautiously, like I was a wild animal that might lash out at any moment. "I understand you're angry, Sam. Hell, I'd be furious too in your shoes. But we need to be strategic about this, okay?" Letting out a shuddering breath, I collapsed into the chair across from her desk. "You're right. I know, it's just, how could he do this to me, Diane? After everything?" She leaned forward, her expression softening. "Some men are just selfish pricks who think only with their dicks. Dan's one of the worst." And to take Caleb's side against his own mother? I shook my head in disbelief. I sacrificed so much for that ungrateful little brat. Which is exactly why we're going to make them pay. Diane's voice hardened as she slid a file across the desk. I had my investigators pull up everything they could find on Dan and his mistress, and let me tell you, it's not pretty. I opened the file, my eyes widening at the damning evidence inside. Bank statements, phone records, even a few incriminating photos of Dan and Amber in compromising positions. "Looks like your husband has been stealing funds from his firm to bankroll his little fling," Diane stated grimly. "Likely been going on for years if these records are accurate." My blood boiled at the thought of Dan using my own hard-earned money to fund his tawdry affair. The bastard. And as for Amber, Diane flipped through some more pages. Multiple counts of tax fraud, illegal drug use, you name it. This girl's dirtier than a mud puddle. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face as I looked up at her. "So in other words, we've got them by the balls." Diane matched my grin. "Exactly. We're going to use every last shred of this evidence to crucify them in court. Dan will be lucky if he's not thrown in prison." "Good," I said with relish. "Let's destroy them utterly. I want that cheating bastard left with nothing. No money, no career, no future." "Consider it done." Diane immediately started scribbling notes. "We'll bury them under an avalanche of lawsuits and criminal charges, hit them from every angle until they have no choice but to surrender." Leaning back in my chair, I felt a rush of vicious satisfaction. Dan and his whore had awoken a vengeful fury inside me. They were about to learn you don't screw over Samantha Henderson without paying dearly for it. "Let the games begin," I stated coldly. "Those two have no idea what kind of hell they've unleashed." I took a long drag from my cigarette, savoring the sweet taste of revenge as I watched the chaos unfold across the street. 2 police cruisers were parked outside Dan's accounting firm, their lights flashing as a pair of officers led a handcuffed Amber out the front doors. The little tramp's usual arrogant smirk was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a look of utter shock and panic. But I didn't do anything," she protested, straining against the cuffs. "This is just a big misunderstanding." The cop merely grunted as he shoved her into the back of the squad car. "Save it for the judge, sweetheart. We've got enough evidence to put you away for a long time." I couldn't resist letting out a derisive chuckle at her desperate pleas. Just a few days ago, she'd been living it up on my husband's dime. Now she was getting a first-class ticket to prison, thanks to the mountain of evidence Diane had gathered. Stubbing out my cigarette, I turned my gaze to the firm's entrance, where Dan was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair agitatedly. A few of his coworkers kept shooting him wary looks as they shuffled past. Right on cue, 2 men in crisp suits emerged. Federal agents, by the look of them. They approached Dan and started questioning him intently. From my vantage point, I could see his face rapidly draining of color as the reality set in. At one point, Dan's eyes went wide with panic, and he started shouting, gesturing wildly. The 2 agents simply shook their heads, one of them pulling out a pair of handcuffs. I felt a rush of dark glee as the cuffs clicked around Dan's wrists. The arrogant, cheating bastard finally brought to heel, led away in disgrace like a common criminal. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Just got word. Dan's been arrested for embezzlement, fraud, the works, and Amber's going down for tax evasion, drug possession, you name it. We've got them nailed." A savage grin spread across my face as I rapidly typed back, "Perfect. Throw away the key and let them rot, the miserable scumbags." I watched with immense satisfaction as the disgraced pair were shoved into separate squad cars and hauled away, no doubt headed straight for an overcrowded holding cell. Popping another cigarette between my lips, I lit it slowly, reveling in the sweet taste of victory. Dan's cushy life was imploding all around him, his job, his money, his future. And it was all thanks to the deliciously incriminating evidence I'd provided the authorities through an anonymous tip. That cheating prick thought he could discard me like trash? Well, he was the one getting tossed in the gutter now, and his precious mistress right along with him. As the cruisers roared off into the distance, I took a long drag and exhaled, feeling utterly vindicated as the acrid smoke swirled around me. They deserved far worse than prison for their betrayal. But for now, this would do nicely. "This is a complete farce." Dan slammed his fist on the table, his face beet red. "You can't seriously be entertaining these outrageous demands from my wife?" I simply stared back at him impassively, letting his impotent rage wash over me. Beside me, Diane calmly flipped through her notes. "I'm afraid the evidence speaks for itself, Mr. Henderson," she stated coolly. "The assets you embezzled, the bank accounts you tried to hide, not to mention your mistress's criminal activities." She shook her head. "You're in no position to make demands." Dan opened his mouth to protest again, but the sharkish divorce lawyer beside him placed a restraining hand on his arm. The smug shark in a suit turned to us with an oily smile. "Now let's not get too hasty here. Surely we can come to a reasonable settlement that avoids any further unpleasantness." I couldn't resist letting out a mocking laugh. "Unpleasantness? You mean like when my husband abandoned me for a cheap whore half his age? Or when he drained our life savings to fund his tawdry affair?" Leaning forward, I fixed Dan with a look of pure loathing. "No, you arrogant prick. The only way this ends is with you giving me everything. The house, the assets, all of it." "You can't be serious," Dan sputtered, his eyes bulging. "After everything I sacrificed to build that wealth for our family?" "Our family?" I shook my head in disgust. "You threw away our family the second you stuck your wrinkly old dick in that silicone-stuffed bimbo." Diane placed a calming hand on my arm, her voice soothing. "What my client is trying to say is that you've left us no choice but to pursue the most aggressive settlement possible. If you'd been smarter about covering your tracks, maybe we could have negotiated." The smug lawyer's bravado was slipping as he shuffled through his papers uncertainly. I could smell his fear, and it smelled delicious. But with the evidence we have of your fraud, embezzlement, and criminal misconduct. Diane shrugged. Well, let's just say that prison is a very real possibility if this goes to trial. One you can't afford. You bitch! Dan exploded, face purpling with rage as he struggled against his lawyer's restraints. You're ruining me, both of you money-grubbing whores. I simply watched in stony silence as the overweight security guard had to come physically restrain Dan, dragging him kicking and screaming from the room like a misbehaving child. Once he was gone, I turned to Diane with a wicked grin. I do love it when the trash takes itself out, she chuckled darkly. That it does. And with this Neanderthal out of the way, we can get down to finalizing this obscenely one-sided settlement. Leaning back in my chair, I lit a fresh cigarette, feeling euphoric as the smoke curled around me. After weeks of vicious legal combat, victory was finally in sight. Oh, don't worry, I stated with savage satisfaction. Dan's going to give me everything I want, and then some. No one betrayed me like he did and got away with it. The cheating bastard was going to pay for the rest of his miserable life. I took a long drag from my cigarette, surveying my new domain with immense satisfaction. The palatial house, the luxury cars in the driveway, the meticulously manicured lawn, all of it was finally, rightfully, mine. And it was all thanks to that deliciously one-sided divorce settlement Diane had brokered. Dan had been forced to sign over every asset, every investment, even the vintage Corvette he loved more than life itself. While that arrogant prick was left with nothing but the clothes on his back and a few thousand in legal fees, I was living in the lap of luxury. Funny how the tables turn, isn't it? The shrill ring of my phone broke the contented silence. Glancing at the caller ID, I smirked before answering. Why, hello, Danny boy. Miss me already? There was an audible snarl on the other end. You money-hungry bitch. I can't believe you took everything from me like this. Ah, what's the matter? I crooned mockingly. Don't like getting a taste of your own medicine for once? Maybe you should have thought about that before you cheated on your wife with a two-bit whore. She's in jail because of you, he raged. You framed Amber and got her locked up on bogus charges. Chuckling, I took another long drag. Well, when the evidence is staring you right in the face, tax evasion, drug possession, illegal bank accounts, she did that all to herself, you idiot. There was a heavy pause before Dan's defeated voice came through the line. Why are you doing this to me, Sam? After everything we built together? For a moment, I almost felt a pang of sadness for the broken man he'd become. Almost. You brought this on yourself the second you decided to throw away our marriage for a fling with some cheap gold digger, I stated coldly. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? You've destroyed me utterly, he whispered, sounding utterly desolate. I've got nothing left. Good, I shot back with vicious satisfaction. That's exactly what you deserve, you selfish prick. Maybe next time you'll appreciate what you had before you tossed it away like garbage. Before he could respond, I abruptly hung up and stubbed out my cigarette decisively. Screw him and his pathetic attempts to appeal to my non-existent guilt. He made his bed, now he could lie in it. Wandering back into the lavish living room, I poured myself a glass of expensive scotch and settled into the plush leather couch. As I savored the first sip, the front door opened and a familiar face stepped inside. There's my sexy sugar mama, Marco purred with a roguish grin, his muscular form sending my pulse racing. At 25 years old, he was barely older than a child, but something about his raw primal masculinity drove me wild. Crossing over to the couch, he pulled me into a deep, smoldering kiss. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless. You're insatiable, you know that? I murmured against his lips. Marco simply chuckled, already working on unbuttoning my blouse. Maybe, but you love it, don't you? His mouth found my neck, trailing scorching kisses along my skin as I arched against him with a soft moan. In this moment, with my young virile lover devouring me, I felt powerful, invincible. Dan and his whore could rot for all I cared. After the hell they'd put me through, I deserved this. The house, the money, everything. Most of all, I deserved to finally be happy again, without a cheating snake like Dan dragging me down. Tangling my fingers in Marco's hair, I pulled him closer, surrendering to the delicious heat coursing through me. This was my reward, and I was going to enjoy it immensely. I smoothed my hands over the silky fabric of my wedding dress, a soft smile playing on my lips as I admired the intricate lace detailing. This was the moment I had dreamed of, marrying into wealth and status, leaving my humble roots behind. But little did I know, the path ahead was paved with humiliation and heartbreak. The lavish engagement party was in full swing, champagne flowing freely as Jake's privileged friends and family mingled. I felt out of place amidst the opulence, my modest upbringing a stark contrast to their world of inherited affluence. Still, I plastered on a smile, determined to win their acceptance. That's when Richard, Jake's imposing father, stepped forward, his expression one of thinly veiled disdain. "Welcome to the family, for now," he announced with a cruel smirk. "Let's see if this charity case can meet our standards." The room fell silent, all eyes on me as my face burned with shame. Jake shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing to defend me against his father's classist jabs. In that moment, I realized the true depths of Richard's contempt for my background. As the party resumed, I found myself reminiscing about how Jake and I first met. He had been so charming, showering me with affection and promises of a better life. But over time, his true colors emerged: the controlling behavior, the belittling comments about my modest means. I had chosen to ignore the red flags, blinded by my desperation to escape poverty. Later that night, Jake tried to apologize for his father's behavior, but the damage was done. The man I had fallen for was gone, replaced by someone who enabled his family's cruelty towards me. A gnawing sense of dread settled in my gut. If this was just the engagement party, what horrors awaited at the wedding itself? Growing up, I never imagined I'd be planning a lavish wedding fit for royalty. My childhood home was a cramped apartment where every penny counted. Mom worked double shifts as a waitress, while Dad juggled odd jobs to keep us afloat. Yet they instilled in me the belief that hard work and determination could unlock a better future. That future seemed tantalizingly close when I met Jake at the local community college. With his expensive sports car and designer clothes, he reeked of money and privilege. But he charmed me with his easy smile and stories of traveling the world. I was smitten, envisioning myself escaping the cycle of poverty. Jake's father, Richard, was far less enamored when we brought up marriage. "You can't be serious," he scoffed during a disastrous family dinner. "Marrying some bargain basement girl from the wrong side of the tracks?" Jake shifted uncomfortably, his eyes downcast. "Dad, don't be like that. Ava's amazing." "Amazing at digging her claws into you for your money, you mean?" Richard sneered at me. "I forbid this circus act of a wedding from happening under my roof." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to show weakness. "With all due respect, it's not your decision. We're both adults capable of making our own choices." "Then you can pay for this sham of a wedding yourself," Richard retorted. "Don't expect a dime from me for some deadbeat's daughter." The venom in his voice shook me to my core. This was the man I hoped to call family, a cold-hearted elitist who viewed me as subhuman filth. Over the following weeks, Richard's disdain only grew more overt. He nitpicked every minor wedding detail, from the venue to the flower arrangements. "This is a disgrace to our family name," he'd mutter under his breath whenever I was within earshot. I confided in Jake, hoping he'd have my back against his father's relentless torment. But he just shrugged it off. "You know how he gets. Don't take it personally." That's when the first seeds of doubt took root. Was tying myself to this entitled family worth enduring their abuse? I pushed those doubts aside, convincing myself I could tough it out as long as I had Jake by my side. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come, a reckoning that would push me to the brink and set the stage for an unthinkable act of revenge. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of last-minute preparations and mounting dread. Richard's contempt only seemed to intensify, his snide remarks cutting deeper each time. I found myself dreading our interactions, bracing for the next insult about my pedestrian tastes or lowbrow background. It all came to a head during the final dress fitting. As I admired the intricate beadwork on my gown, Richard barged into the boutique, his face thunderous. "You conniving little grifter," he spat, thrusting a crumpled document in my face. "Did you think you could keep this buried forever?" My heart pounded as I scanned the pages, a decades-old arrest record detailing a misdemeanor charge from my turbulent teenage years. An act of desperation to keep a roof over my family's head, but one that could shatter my dreams if exposed. "So this is the caliber of woman you're shackling yourself to?" Richard turned to Jake, who had trailed in behind him. "A criminal from the dregs of society?" Jake's expression was inscrutable. "Ava, what is all this about?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How could I explain the complexities of poverty and sacrifice to those who never had to struggle? Richard seized the opportunity, his voice dripping with venom. "Mark my words, this sordid affair ends now. Unless—" He leaned in close, his hot breath on my face. "You sign an airtight prenup, one that protects every last penny of my fortune when this inevitable dumpster fire inevitably implodes." Bile rose in my throat as the gravity of his words hit me. He was willing to publicly humiliate me, to trample on my fragile dreams, all to maintain his twisted sense of superiority. "And if I refuse," I managed to choke out, "then this lovely paper trail will be the first thing your precious husband sees on your wedding day." Richard's smile was chilling, along with copies for all our esteemed guests to admire. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The months of denigration, the constant belittling, the unbridled cruelty, it all came rushing forth in a tidal wave of rage. Before I could stop myself, my hand lashed out, slapping Richard squarely across his smug face. "You evil, miserable bastard!" Jake rushed forward, grabbing my arms as Richard cupped his stinging cheek, his eyes widening in shock. "You'll regret this, you insolent wench." As security ushered us out, I caught a glimpse of my distorted reflection in the boutique window. The woman staring back was a stranger, her face contorted in anguish, her body trembling with equal parts fury and despair. This was a turning point, I realized. I could either surrender to Richard's twisted demands or take a stand, no matter the cost. And as Jake led me away in stunned silence, I knew deep down that my path had been chosen. I stormed into Marcus's apartment, my chest heaving and tears streaking my cheeks. He took one look at my disheveled appearance and ushered me inside, his brow furrowed with concern. "Ava, what happened? You look like you've been through hell." The words tumbled out in a torrent as I recounted the horrific confrontation with Richard, his vile threats, his callous disregard for my dignity. By the time I finished, Marcus's hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists. "That pretentious prick has gone too far this time," he seethed. "First he treats you like garbage, and now he's trying to blackmail you into signing away your rights?" I nodded miserably, feeling the weight of Richard's ultimatum pressing down on me. "I don't know what to do, Marcus. If I refuse, he'll ruin everything. The wedding, my relationship with Jake." "Screw the wedding," Marcus exploded, startling me with the ferocity of his outburst. "And screw that entitled bastard and his snotty family." He paced back and forth, running an agitated hand through his hair. "You've bent over backwards trying to appease them, and look where it's gotten you. Disrespected and degraded at every turn." Grasping my shoulders, Marcus locked eyes with me, his gaze intense. "You're not some doormat for them to walk all over, Ava. It's time to show that pompous ass that we don't take shit from anyone, family money or not." A glimmer of determination flickered to life inside me, fanning the flames of the anger still simmering from my confrontation with Richard. Marcus was right. I had cowered for too long, desperately seeking their acceptance at the expense of my self-worth. "You're saying I should fight back?" I asked, my voice trembling yet resolute. "Take the battle to them for once?" Marcus's expression was grim, but unwavering. "I'm saying it's long past time we stop playing by their rules. If Richard wants a war, we'll give him one he'll never forget." His next words sent an electrifying chill down my spine. "I'll dig up every last skeleton in that bastard's closet if that's what it takes to bring him down." In that moment, the path ahead crystallized with brutal clarity. There would be no more placating, no more hollow apologies or hollow compromises. The gloves were finally coming off. Consequences be damned. As I looked at my brother, my fiercest protector and closest confidant, I saw the future unfolding. We would band together, unified in our quest to dismantle the Hollister Empire from the inside out, and Richard would soon learn that hell hath no fury like a woman repeatedly denied her rightful place. The days ticked by in a blur as Marcus compiled his dossier on Richard Hollister, meticulously unearthing every sordid secret and unscrupulous dealing. The man's carefully curated facade was rapidly crumbling under the weight of cold, hard evidence. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," Marcus muttered grimly, shuffling through stacks of documents detailing shady business transactions, undisclosed offshore accounts, and more. "The old bastard's got more skeletons in his closet than a haunted house." I pored over the damning paper trail with a mixture of grim satisfaction and simmering rage. So this was the great Richard Hollister. Upstanding pillar of society by day, duplicitous conman by night. The revelation failed to surprise me. Wealthy elites always played by their own set of rules. As the wedding day loomed, I found myself wavering between icy resolve and overwhelming dread. Part of me longed to call the whole thing off, to wash my hands of the Hollister name forever. But the other part, the part that had seethed in silent humiliation for far too long, burned with the white-hot need to make Richard pay. Marcus must have sensed my turmoil. "Having second thoughts?" he asked one evening as we pored over the final pieces of our meticulously constructed case against Richard. I worried my lower lip, considering my response carefully. I'm not sure I can go through with it. Hurting Jake, becoming the kind of vengeful person I despise." "Hurting Jake?" Marcus arched an incredulous eyebrow. "After everything his father has put you through, he's lucky you haven't pressed charges for emotional distress and defamation of character." His words rang brutally true. For too long, I had internalized the toxic notion that I was the wrongdoer, that I somehow deserved the onslaught of cruelty for daring to rise above my station. But no more. "You're right," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "I didn't ask for any of this. Richard brought this on himself with his arrogance and bigotry." A grim smile played across Marcus's lips. "Then let's make sure the Hollisters reap what they've sown, once and for all." The morning of the wedding arrived in a swirl of nervous energy and giddy anticipation. As I slipped into my gown, Marcus gave me one last conspiratorial nod. "It's showtime," he murmured. "You ready to burn that son of a bitch's kingdom to the ground?" I met his gaze steadily, feeling an uncharacteristic surge of power course through my veins. "More than ready," I replied, steeling myself for the biggest performance of my life. "Richard's about to learn that payback is a bitch." The lavish reception hall glistened with opulence, crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the impeccably dressed guests. Waiters glided by with trays of champagne flutes, the bubbles sparkling like liquid diamonds. It was a scene straight out of the lifestyles of the rich and famous, a far cry from my own humble roots. As I stood beside Jake at the altar, resplendent in my pristine white gown, I couldn't help but marvel at the extravagance surrounding us. This was the life I had coveted for so long, wealth, status, and all the trappings of the upper crust. Yet that fairy tale illusion was rapidly crumbling before my eyes. Richard caught my gaze from the front row, his expression one of poorly veiled disdain. He had begrudgingly signed off on the wedding after I agreed to his draconian prenup, but his contempt still radiated like a noxious cloud. I felt Jake tense beside me, no doubt sensing the palpable tension in the air. The ceremony droned on, the officiant's words fading into a dull murmur as my focus zeroed in on Marcus. He gave me the slightest of nods, his eyes glinting with steely determination. Our moment of reckoning was nigh. As Jake and I exchanged rings, the grand double doors at the back of the hall burst open with a resonant bang. All heads swiveled as Marcus strode down the aisle, brandishing a thick manila envelope overhead. "Sorry for the rude interruption, folks," he announced, his voice ringing with cold clarity. "But before this farce continues, I believe the guests deserve to know exactly who they're celebrating." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Marcus tore open the envelope, extracting the first of many damning documents. For years, Richard Hollister has portrayed himself as a pillar of moral fortitude and philanthropic generosity. Marcus's gaze locked onto the stunned patriarch. But I've uncovered a paper trail that proves his empire was built on lies, corruption, and moral bankruptcy. One by one, Marcus unveiled the sordid findings, records of insider trading, embezzlement, illicit affairs with subordinates, and more. The crowd's shock escalated into a crescendo of outrage as the enormity of the revelations sank in. Richard was on his feet now, face mottled in apoplectic rage. "You insolent worms! How dare you propagate these slanderous lies against me?" But the evidence was irrefutable, laid bare for all to see. His carefully cultivated facade was crumbling, the veil of propriety torn asunder to expose the repugnant truth lurking beneath. Jake turned to me, his expression a mask of stunned betrayal. "Ava, what have you done?" Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance as two burly security guards flanked a wild-eyed Richard. "Get your hands off me, you imbeciles," he sputtered, struggling against their iron grip. "This is an outrage, a travesty." As they hauled him away, his veneer of composure shattered completely. "You'll all pay for this humiliation. Every last one of you, treacherous snakes." His words dissolved into incoherent sputtering as the guards dragged him out, his legacy disintegrating into ashes around him. The once mighty Richard Hollister, unceremoniously dethroned by the very woman he had derided as beneath his contempt. A deafening silence descended over the hall as the gravity of the moment sank in. I turned to survey the stunned assembly, my chest swelling with a heady concoction of triumph and vindication. The debt had finally been paid in full. The aftermath of Richard's spectacular downfall was a whirlwind of chaos and recrimination. As the shocked guests dispersed, the once opulent reception hall took on the air of a dilapidated ruin, the shattered remnants of grandeur strewn about like tragic vestiges of a fallen empire. Jake rounded on me, his expression a mask of barely contained fury. "How could you do this, Ava? Destroy everything we've built together with your twisted need for vengeance?" I opened my mouth to respond, but he barreled on, his words lashing out like a whip. "My father was right about you all along. You're nothing but a scheming opportunist out for our money and status." The accusation stung, but I refused to back down. "Your father brought this on himself with his reprehensible behavior. I'm done being treated like a second-class citizen, Jake. If you can't see that, then we have nothing left to say to each other." His nostrils flared, jaw clenched in impotent rage. For a fleeting moment, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd fallen for, the charming, good-natured soul who had swept me off my feet. But it was quickly extinguished, smothered by the twisted ideology of superiority he'd inherited from his disgraced patriarch. "Then I guess this is goodbye," he spat, ripping off his tuxedo jacket and flinging it to the ground in disgust. "I hope you and your low-life brother enjoy gloating over your hollow victory. You've just flushed your last chance at a better life down the drain." With that parting salvo, he stormed off, leaving me standing amidst the wreckage of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. A hollow ache blossomed in my chest as the finality of our shattered relationship sank in. Marcus materialized at my side, his expression a mixture of grim satisfaction and concern. "You okay, sis? That was one hell of a bombshell to drop." I let out a shuddering breath, willing my turbulent emotions into submission. "I'll be fine. Just getting some much-needed closure, I suppose." His arm draped around my shoulders, offering a reassuring squeeze. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you for standing your ground. The Hollisters had this karmic reckoning coming for a long time." I nodded, my gaze drifting to the ornate doubled doors where Jake had stormed out mere moments ago. A part of me still clung to the naive hope that he would see reason, that the man I loved was still in there somewhere beneath the toxic conditioning. But his vehement rejection, coupled with the searing finality of his parting words, told a different story. This was the point of no return. By dismantling the Hollister empire, I had irrevocably severed all ties to that world of privilege and status I had so desperately coveted. The dream was officially over, replaced by what? A future that was as terrifyingly uncertain as it was exhilaratingly wide open. As Marcus and I made our way out of the decimated reception hall, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of lightness amidst the emotional turbulence. The shackles of oppression, the constant need to contort myself into someone more palatable to the elite, had finally been shattered. For the first time in my life, I was beholden to no one but myself. And that realization was more intoxicating than any amount of wealth or prestige the Hollister name could offer. 6 months had passed since the cataclysmic unraveling of the Hollister dynasty, and my life had taken an unexpected but oddly fulfilling detour. Gone were the days of desperately chasing acceptance from the elite, of contorting myself into someone I wasn't just for a taste of their rarefied air. Instead, I had channeled my newfound freedom into pursuing my own entrepreneurial ambitions. With a small loan from Marcus and an ironclad determination to blaze my own trail, I had opened a quaint little cafe in the heart of the city. Nothing fancy, just good food, friendly service, and a warm, welcoming atmosphere, the antithesis of the Hollister's cold, ostentatious trappings. As I surveyed the lunchtime rush, smiling at the cheerful chatter and aroma of freshly brewed coffee that permeated the air, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I'd come. No more walking on eggshells, no more swallowing my pride for the sake of social climbing. This was my kingdom now, built from the ground up through sheer grit and perseverance. The tinkling of the front doorbell snapped me from my reverie. I glanced up and felt my breath catch in my throat. There, shuffling in with a haunted, defeated look, was Richard Hollister, or what remained of him. His once impeccable suit hung loosely on his withered frame, his eyes sunken and rimmed with fatigue. The mighty Titan had well and truly fallen, his reputation and empire lying in smoldering ruins. For a moment, our gazes locked, a silent acknowledgment passing between us. He knew I had orchestrated his downfall, just as I recognized the broken husk of a man before me as the architect of my own suffering. There was no need for words. The cosmic scales had been balanced, for better or worse. Richard slumped into a corner booth, shoulders sagging beneath an invisible weight. As I approached to take his order, a flicker of his former arrogance resurfaced. "Come to gloat, have you?" he rasped, his voice a reedy shadow of its once booming timbre. "Admire the devastation you've wrought on me and my family?" I studied him for a long moment, seeing not the sneering elitist who had derided me at every turn, but a pathetic, empty husk. Revenge, once so intoxicating in its inevitability, suddenly felt hollow and unfulfilling. "I'm not here to gloat, Richard," I said at last. "Just to take your order, if you're still welcome here." His brows knitted in confusion, as if he couldn't quite process the olive branch I was extending. For so long we had been locked in an endless cycle of escalating hostilities that the concept of civility was now utterly foreign. Finally he gave a weary nod. Just a black coffee, then." As I turned to leave, his gravelly voice stopped me. "You've won, you know. Taken everything from me, my business, my reputation, my family." A rueful chuckle escaped his cracked lips. "I don't even know who I am anymore without all of that." I looked back at him, feeling an unexpected pang of sadness amidst the hard-won sense of victory. Here was a man who had tied his entire identity to his material trappings, never realizing how empty and meaningless it all was until everything had been stripped away. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I heard myself saying. "A chance to start over, to find value in something other than old money and status." Richard's gaze was inscrutable as I walked away, leaving him to ponder my words and the hollow remnants of the life he had once clung to so desperately. As for me, I had found my rebirth, a new existence forged from the ashes of the old. And while the journey had been devastating, the freedom and self-determination I now possessed made every hardship worthwhile. The debt was paid, the scales finally balanced. Now it was time to flourish on my own terms.